She woke up every night at exactly 3:33 a.m. with her hand raised toward the ceiling, tracing patterns in the air. Constellations, she realized after the third time it happened. But not constellations she recognized from Earth's night sky. These were different configurations. Stars arranged in patterns she had never seen in any astronomy book or planetarium show. And somehow, impossibly, she knew their names, not in English or any language she spoke, but in sounds that felt ancient and alien on her tongue. The stars were calling to her from a sky that wasn't Earth's, from a time when she had looked up and seen home. Her name was Rebecca, and she had always loved astronomy. As a child, she would spend hours lying in her backyard staring up at the stars, feeling a longing she couldn't explain. Her parents bought her a telescope when she was 10, and she memorized every constellation visible from their latitude. She knew the stories behind the star patterns, the Greek myths and the indigenous legends. But these stars she was drawing in the air at 3:33 a.m. every night were different. They formed shapes that didn't exist in Earth's celestial sphere. The pattern tracing started suddenly. When Rebecca was 29, she would fall asleep normally, then jolt awake at exactly 3:33. Her arm already raised, her finger moving through the air as if marking coordinates on an invisible map. The movements were precise and deliberate, following the same sequence every time. She would trace one constellation, then another, then a third, connecting them with lines that formed a larger pattern. And while she was doing this, she would feel an overwhelming sense of homesickness, a grief so deep it brought tears to her eyes. After a week of this, Rebecca started keeping a notebook by her bed. Each time she woke up, tracing the patterns, she would immediately sketch what she had drawn, trying to capture the star configurations before the memory faded. Over the course of a month, she accumulated dozens of drawings. They were consistent, showing the same constellations night after night. But she had no idea what they meant or why her sleeping self felt compelled to draw them. She tried researching online, comparing her drawings to star maps from different Earth locations and different time periods. Nothing matched. She showed the drawings to an astronomy professor at the local university, hoping he might recognize them as ancient star charts or something from a different hemisphere. He looked at them with interest but said they didn't correspond to any stellar configuration visible from Earth, either now or in the historical past. Based on stellar drift calculations, Rebecca became obsessed with understanding what was happening. She considered sleep disorders, neurological issues, even the possibility that she was experiencing some kind of psychic phenomenon. But nothing explained why the patterns were so specific and repetitive, why they came at exactly 3:33 a.m. every night, and why they filled her with such profound emotional responses. A friend suggested past life regression. Rebecca had never given much thought to past lives or reincarnation, but she was running out of rational explanations. The friend gave her the name of a regression therapist who specialized in what she called non-Earth incarnations, cases where people seemed to carry memories from lifetimes on other planets or in other dimensional realities. The therapist's name was Dr. Miriam, and she had been doing this work for 30 years. Rebecca was skeptical when she arrived at Dr. Miriam's office, but she was also desperate for answers. The sleepless nights were wearing on her, and the emotional intensity of the experiences was becoming difficult to manage. Dr. Miriam listened carefully as Rebecca described the nightly pattern tracing, looked at the drawings Rebecca had brought, and nodded with understanding that suggested she had seen similar cases before. Dr. Miriam explained that sometimes people carried memories not just from past lives on Earth but from incarnations on other worlds, in other star systems. She said that many souls had experienced existence in various forms and locations across the universe before incarnating on Earth, and sometimes those memories would surface, especially through dreams or altered states of consciousness. The star patterns Rebecca was drawing might be actual memories of a sky she had once looked up at from another planet. Rebecca didn't know whether to feel relieved or more confused. The idea that she might have lived on another planet sounded like science fiction, yet it somehow resonated with that deep longing she had always felt when looking at stars. Dr. Miriam suggested a regression session to explore where these memories were coming from, to see if Rebecca could consciously access whatever her sleeping mind was trying to communicate. The session was scheduled for the following week. Rebecca spent the intervening days continuing to document her nightly pattern tracing, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and apprehension about what she might discover. Part of her hoped the regression would reveal a simple explanation, something mundane and earthly, but another part, the part that traced those alien constellations every night, suspected the truth would be far stranger. The day of the session arrived. Dr. Miriam's office was warm and comfortable, filled with books about consciousness and spirituality, with artwork depicting galaxies and cosmic phenomena. They began with a long conversation about Rebecca's experiences, her feelings about the stars, her sense of longing and homesickness. Dr. Miriam asked if Rebecca had ever felt like she didn't fully belong on Earth, like some part of her was from somewhere else. Rebecca admitted that yes, she had always felt slightly out of place, like an observer of human life rather than a full participant. Dr. Miriam explained the regression process, how she would guide Rebecca into a deep trance state where her subconscious mind could access memories beyond this current lifetime. She emphasized that Rebecca would be safe, would maintain awareness, and could return to normal consciousness at any time. Then, they began. Dr. Miriam's voice was calm and steady as she guided Rebecca to close her eyes, to focus on her breathing, to allow her body to relax completely. She used a progressive relaxation technique, having Rebecca tense and release each muscle group, releasing accumulated tension with each exhale. Rebecca felt herself sinking deeper into the comfortable chair, her awareness turning inward, the sounds of the office fading into background noise. Dr. Miriam counted her down, 10 to 1, each number taking Rebecca deeper into trance. She suggested that when Rebecca reached the deepest level, she would find herself in the place where the star patterns came from, in the lifetime or experience that her sleeping mind had been trying to remember. Rebecca felt herself descending through layers of consciousness, through this lifetime, past birth, past the veil between incarnations, and into something vast and unfamiliar. When Dr. Miriam asked her to open her awareness to where she was, Rebecca found herself somewhere that was definitely not Earth. She was standing on ground that felt solid beneath her feet, but the surface was smooth and slightly luminous, like polished stone that glowed with its own internal light. The air around her was breathable, but thinner than Earth's atmosphere, carrying scents that were entirely alien, metallic, and sweet at the same time. But what captured her complete attention was the sky. She looked up and gasped, even in her trance state, because the sky was filled with stars like she had never seen from Earth. Not the scattered points of light visible through Earth's atmosphere, but a dense river of stars, so many and so bright that they illuminated everything with a soft glow. And the patterns, oh the patterns! There were the constellations she had been tracing every night, clearly visible, dominant features of this sky. She recognized them instantly, felt a rush of joy and recognition seeing them in their proper context. Dr. Miriam's voice came from somewhere distant, asking Rebecca to describe what she was experiencing. Rebecca tried to put it into words, struggled to convey the majesty and strangeness of this place. She said she was on another world, a planet that orbited a star, in what she somehow knew was a different part of the galaxy. The planet was smaller than Earth, with lower gravity, which explained the lightness she felt in her body. And the sky, the glorious sky, was visible with a clarity impossible on Earth because this planet had almost no atmosphere to obscure the stars. Dr. Miriam asked if Rebecca had a body, what form she was taking in this memory. Rebecca looked down at herself and saw that yes, she had a physical form, but it wasn't human. She was taller and more slender than a human body, with longer limbs and larger eyes adapted to see in lower light conditions. Her skin had a slight blue-gray tint, and when she raised her hands to examine them, she saw that her fingers were longer and more delicate than human fingers, with an extra joint that gave them greater flexibility. But despite the alien appearance, she felt completely at home in this body. This was her natural form, or at least, it had been her form in this particular incarnation. She felt no discomfort or strangeness, only a deep sense of familiarity and rightness. This was who she had been before she became Rebecca, before she incarnated as human. Dr. Miriam asked what her name was, in this lifetime, what she was called. Rebecca felt for the name and found it, though it didn't translate easily into English sounds. It was something like Telomere, a name that meant something like Star Watcher, or Keeper of the Sky in the language her species used. She had been an astronomer, she realized, or something similar to what humans would call an astronomer. Her role had been to study and map the stars, to understand the movements of celestial bodies, to guide her people in their navigation, both physical and spiritual. Dr. Miriam asked her to describe her world, her civilization. Telomere looked around and saw structures nearby, buildings that were organic in their curves and lines, seeming to grow from the ground rather than being constructed upon it. They glowed softly in the starlight, and she understood they were made from a crystalline material that her people had learned to grow and shape. Inside these structures, she knew, were libraries of knowledge, observatories, places of learning and contemplation. Her civilization was ancient, far older than human civilization on Earth. Her people had evolved on this world over millions of years, had long ago passed through the phases of violence and conflict that young civilizations went through, and had emerged into a state of harmony and cosmic awareness. They didn't have wars or poverty or the social problems that plagued Earth. They had learned to live in balance with their planet and with each other, had developed technology that worked with natural laws rather than against them. But they were also facing a challenge, Telomere explained to Dr. Miriam. Their sun was dying, not immediately, not catastrophically, but gradually over the course of what would be thousands of Earth years. The star was expanding, slowly, becoming a red giant, and eventually it would consume their planet. Her people had known this was coming for generations. They had time to prepare, time to plan, but the reality remained that their home world would eventually become uninhabitable. Dr. Miriam asked what Telomere's role was in relation to this crisis. She explained that she was part of a project to map potential new homeworlds. Her people had developed the ability to travel to other star systems, though the journeys took many years even with their advanced technology. They were searching for planets that could support their form of life, studying star systems throughout the galaxy, identifying possibilities for where they might relocate when the time came. That's why she spent so much time studying the stars, creating detailed maps and charts. She needed to understand the three-dimensional relationships between star systems, needed to identify the safest and most efficient routes through space, needed to catalog planets that might be suitable for colonization. Her work was critical to her people's survival, and she took it seriously, spending long hours in the observatory gazing up at the stars she loved so much. But there was another dimension to her work that was harder to explain. Telomere and her people understood that consciousness wasn't limited to the physical realm. They knew about the soul's ability to incarnate in different forms, in different locations, across different timelines. And part of Telomere's research involved not just physical observation of stars but what humans might call psychic or intuitive exploration of other worlds. She would enter deep meditative states, would project her consciousness across the vast distances of space, would experience other worlds from the inside by temporarily connecting with life forms that lived there. It was a form of remote viewing, but more intimate and complete. She could know what it felt like to live on another planet, could assess its suitability not just physically but energetically and spiritually. And that's how she first became aware of Earth. Dr. Miriam asked Telomere to describe this moment, to show how she discovered the planet that would eventually become her next home. The scene shifted, and Telomere found herself in her personal meditation chamber. A small domed room with transparent walls that gave a 360-degree view of the stars above and around her. She had been systematically exploring star systems that her physical instruments indicated might have habitable planets. She would focus on a particular star, would send her consciousness across the light years of distance, would search for worlds capable of supporting life. Most of what she found was barren rock or gas giants, planets that were either too hot or too cold, too large or too small, atmospheres that were toxic or non-existent. But then she focused on a yellow star, in what would later be called the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy, about 25,000 light-years from her own world. The star was stable, middle-aged, with a system of planets orbiting it, and the third planet from the star caught her attention immediately. It was blue and green and white, swirling with clouds and water, and teeming with life. She extended her consciousness toward this planet, felt herself drawn into its atmosphere, descending toward its surface. And what she found amazed her. This planet, Earth, was extraordinarily alive, not just with simple organisms but with complex ecosystems, with millions of species, with a diversity of life that was rare in the galaxy, and most significantly, there was a species beginning to develop higher consciousness, primates that walked upright and used tools and were just starting to use language and create culture. Telomere observed these early humans with fascination. They were so different from her own species, so emotional and physical and raw. They experienced life with an intensity that her more evolved people had long ago transcended. They felt deep passions and fierce attachments and wild creativity. They were violent and loving, destructive and innovative, chaotic and beautiful. They were, she realized, at a critical stage of development where they could either destroy themselves or evolve into something magnificent. She reported her findings to the Council of Elders who oversaw the migration project. Earth was potentially habitable for her people, she explained, though the atmosphere was denser than they preferred and the gravity was stronger. But more interestingly, Earth was home to a young species that was on the cusp of major evolutionary leaps. The elders discussed what this meant. Should they consider Earth as a potential colony, despite the presence of native intelligent life? Or should they respect the humans' sovereignty and leave the planet to develop on its own? The debate continued for what would be many Earth years. Telomere remained fascinated by Earth and the humans, continued her consciousness explorations, watching as human civilizations slowly developed. She observed them through their Stone Age, watched as they discovered agriculture and formed the first settlements, saw them build cities and create art and develop increasingly complex social structures. She felt a growing affection for humanity, an appreciation for their passionate engagement with physical existence. And then something unexpected happened. Telomere began to consider that, instead of her people physically colonizing Earth, perhaps there was another option. Perhaps some of her people could incarnate as humans, could be born into human bodies, could experience Earth from the inside while also contributing to humanity's development. They could help guide the species, could accelerate their evolution, could prepare them for eventual contact with other intelligent life in the galaxy. This idea was revolutionary. Her people rarely incarnated outside their own species, preferring the comfort and familiarity of their natural form. But Telomere felt called to this mission. She wanted to experience Earth directly, wanted to know what it felt like to be human, wanted to contribute to the unfolding story of this beautiful planet and its passionate inhabitants. And she knew that by incarnating as human, she could help from the inside in ways that external intervention never could. She presented her proposal to the council. Some elders were supportive, recognizing the wisdom of this approach. Others were concerned, warning that incarnating as human would mean forgetting, would mean being caught in the density and limitation of physical existence on a challenging planet, would mean experiencing suffering and death in ways her species had long ago evolved beyond. But Telomere was determined. She felt this was her calling, her next adventure, her opportunity to serve both her own people and humanity by becoming a bridge between worlds. The council eventually agreed, and preparations began. Telomere would incarnate on Earth, would be born as human, would carry within her soul the star maps and cosmic awareness from her lifetime as an astronomer on another world. She wouldn't consciously remember at first, but at some point in her human life, the memories would begin to surface, would guide her toward her purpose, would help her fulfill the mission she had chosen. Dr. Miriam asked Telomere to move forward, to show the transition from her extraterrestrial life to her eventual incarnation as Rebecca. Telomere described going through the death process of her species, which was gentle and conscious. Her people didn't fear death because they understood it was simply a transition, a shedding of one form and returning to pure consciousness before choosing the next adventure. She lay down in a special chamber designed to ease the transition. Her people gathered around her, not with grief but with celebration and gratitude for her service and her courage in choosing such a challenging next incarnation. They sang harmonics that helped her consciousness separate from her body, and as she died, as she left that slender blue-gray form behind, she carried with her the star maps, the cosmic awareness, the love for both her homeworld and the Earth she was preparing to serve. She moved through the between-life space, the realm where souls exist before incarnating. She reviewed her life as Telomere, understood the lessons and growth from that experience. She met with her guides, who confirmed that incarnating on Earth as human was indeed her next step. They warned her again that it would be difficult, that she would forget much of what she knew, that she would struggle with the density and limitation of human existence. But they also assured her that when the time was right, she would remember enough to fulfill her purpose. She watched from the soul realm as Earth continued to evolve, as human civilization advanced through its various stages. She waited for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right parents who would give her the body and upbringing that would best serve her mission. And finally, in the late 20th century, she incarnated as Rebecca, was born into a human body, entered the stream of human life. Dr. Miriam guided Rebecca to understand the connection between Telomere's life and her current experiences. The star patterns she was tracing every night at 3:33 a.m., were the exact star maps Telomere had studied for so many years. The view of the sky from her homeworld, her sleeping consciousness was remembering, was trying to reconnect with that part of her soul that came from elsewhere, was reaching across time and space to touch the home she had left behind. The time, 3:33 a.m., was significant because it corresponded to what would have been a sacred observing hour on Telomere's world, when the stars were at their most visible and powerful. Rebecca's body was remembering that timing, was responding to an ancient rhythm encoded in her soul, and the homesickness she felt was real. Part of her did come from somewhere else, did remember looking up at a different sky, did carry within her the experiences of a civilization far older and more evolved than anything Earth had yet achieved. Dr. Merriam also explained that Rebecca's love of astronomy, her lifelong fascination with the stars, her sense of not quite belonging on Earth, all of it made sense in this context. She was a star person, a soul who had incarnated on Earth but whose origins were elsewhere, and her purpose in this lifetime was to carry that cosmic perspective, to help humanity expand its understanding of what's possible, to prepare people for the reality that we are not alone in the universe and never have been. Slowly, gently, Dr. Miriam brought Rebecca back to present awareness. The transition felt like rising up through water, through layers of memory and consciousness, from Telomere's world to Rebecca's body in the therapist's office. When Rebecca opened her eyes, she was crying but also smiling. Everything made sense now. The longing, the patterns, the feeling of being from elsewhere. It was all true. She had lived on another world. She had studied those stars. She had chosen to come to Earth. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca's life transformed. The nightly pattern tracing continued, but it no longer disturbed her sleep. Instead, it became a cherished practice, a way of connecting with her larger identity, a meditation that grounded her in the knowledge of who she really was. She started recording the patterns more systematically, creating detailed star maps that she somehow knew were accurate representations of the sky from Telomere's world. She also began sharing her experience cautiously at first, then more openly. She connected with others who identified as starseeds or extraterrestrial souls, people who also carried memories of incarnations on other worlds. She discovered there were many of them, scattered across the planet, all with similar stories of feeling like they came from elsewhere, of remembering different skies, of carrying cosmic awareness into their human lives. Rebecca started a blog where she shared her star maps and her story. To her amazement, several people contacted her saying they recognized the star patterns, that they had seen the same configurations in their own dreams or visions. Some even claimed to have memories of the same world Telomere had come from, suggesting that Rebecca wasn't the only soul from that civilization who had chosen to incarnate on Earth. She also used her experience to develop a deeper understanding of her purpose. As Telomere, she had been a bridge between her dying world and potential new homes, including Earth. As Rebecca, she was still a bridge, but now between Earth and the larger galactic community. Her role was to help humanity expand its consciousness, to prepare people for the reality of other intelligent life in the universe, to share the cosmic perspective she carried. She gave talks and wrote articles about consciousness and extraterrestrial contact, not from a place of fantasy or wishful thinking but from the authority of actual memory and experience. She helped people understand that we are all cosmic beings, that Earth is just one of countless worlds supporting life, that human souls have incarnated in many forms and many places throughout the universe. This knowledge was meant to make people feel insignificant, but rather to expand their sense of identity and possibility. Rebecca also maintained her love of astronomy but with a new depth of understanding. When she looked through telescopes at distant stars and galaxies, she wasn't just seeing beautiful objects in space. She was looking at places where she and countless other souls had lived, learned, and evolved. The universe wasn't cold and empty. It was teeming with life and consciousness, with civilizations at various stages of development, with souls moving between worlds and experiences in an endless cosmic dance. The star maps that had once troubled her sleep became her most treasured possession. She had them printed and framed, hung them on her walls as reminders of where she came from and why she was here. When she felt lost or discouraged by the difficulties of human life, she would look at those maps and remember Telomere's world, remember the choice she had made to leave that peaceful, evolved civilization and incarnate into the chaos and passion of Earth. And she understood why she had made that choice. Earth, with all its challenges and suffering, was also extraordinary in its beauty and diversity and raw creative power. Humans, despite their violence and ignorance, had a capacity for love and innovation that was rare in the galaxy. This planet was worth serving. These people were worth helping. And by bringing her cosmic awareness into human form, by sharing what she remembered from elsewhere, she was contributing to humanity's evolution in exactly the way Telomere had envisioned so many years ago when she first discovered Earth. Years passed. Rebecca's understanding continued to deepen. She did more regression sessions, accessing other lifetimes on other worlds, mapping her soul's journey through various incarnations across the galaxy. She discovered she had lived as many different species, in many different circumstances, each experience adding to her soul's wisdom and capability. But the lifetime as Telomere remained the most significant for her current incarnation. That was the life that had brought her to Earth, that had given her the star maps she traced every night, that connected her to a larger cosmic story that most humans weren't yet ready to understand. She felt privileged to carry that memory, to be one of the souls who remembered their origins elsewhere, to serve as a conscious bridge between worlds. She thought often about Telomere's civilization, wondered if they had eventually found a new home world, if they had survived the death of their son. She suspected they had, that a species so wise and evolved would have successfully navigated that transition, and she imagined them out there somewhere, still studying the stars, still mapping the galaxy, still sending souls like her to other worlds to experience and learn and serve. Rebecca also considered the possibility that she might return to Telomere's world in a future incarnation, that after her work on Earth was complete, she might choose to be born again into that slender blue-gray form, to once again look up at that glorious star-filled sky and feel the lightness of lower gravity. The thought brought her comfort. She wasn't trapped on Earth. This was just one chapter in a much larger story. One life in an endless series of experiences her soul was having across the cosmos. And in the meantime, she had work to do here. Humanity was at a critical juncture, just as Telomere had observed all those years ago. Earth was facing environmental collapse, social upheaval, the potential for self-destruction through misuse of technology, but it was also experiencing an awakening, a growing number of people remembering their cosmic nature, expanding their consciousness, preparing for the next stage of evolution. Rebecca's role in this awakening was to remind people that we are not alone, that we come from the stars, that Earth is one small part of a vast living universe filled with intelligence and consciousness. By sharing her story, her memories, her star maps, she helped others expand their sense of identity and possibility. She helped people understand that the limitations of human existence were temporary, that the soul was eternal and could experience countless forms and worlds. Looking back on that period of waking up every night at 3:33 a.m., tracing constellations in the air, Rebecca felt only gratitude. What had seemed like a disturbing mystery had turned out to be a gift, a calling from her deeper self to remember, to wake up, to reclaim her full identity. The star maps had been breadcrumbs leading her back to the truth of who she was and why she was here. And now, when she traced those patterns, either in the air at 3:33 a.m. or on paper during her waking hours, she wasn't just drawing random constellations. She was honoring her past, connecting with her cosmic origins, and fulfilling the mission Telomere had chosen all those years ago when she first looked down at Earth from her distant world and decided that this beautiful blue planet full of passionate, chaotic humans was worth dedicating a lifetime to serving. Subscribe to explore more souls who remember skies from worlds beyond Earth.